are the best and worst characters in Genshin Impact? And how do you even describe something like that? That's what I wanted to find out when I opened a survey back in April asking Genshin players to tell me how they describe what they like and dislike in Genshin Impact. And after 2,704 responses, I have my answer. Welcome to the Aster's Lab series, where I make surveys about you. Today's survey is called The Best and the Worst of Genshin, a survey on audience perception and criteria formation when ranking favorites. This idea came to me when I saw a bunch of people on Twitter complaining again about certain character designs and some defending them, and honestly, when you read enough of it, you actually see that there's a pattern in how people call something good or bad. So I pulled up a survey, and now here we are. Now, disclaimer. These surveys are made for fun and mostly research purposes on my end because I want to know what makes the Genshin players tick. Just because a character is voted either the best or the worst doesn't mean they objectively are. Popular opinion doesn't equate facts, and just because your character wasn't voted as the best or the worst doesn't mean that your opinion is invalid. So let's begin. The survey itself is divided into multiple sections. The first section asks you about your profile as a player, when did you first start playing Genshin, how often did you play Genshin, and your adventure rank. Then I ask you, who do you think is the best in each category in Genshin Impact? Best visual design, best in combat, best in personality, story quest, etc. Now the reverse of this is I also wanted players to think of the opposite, if they can give a character that they think is the worst for each category. Now here's the very important part. I heavily implied in the instructions that you have to answer one character for each question, but I also gave people the option to not answer at all. For example, you can put a dash or a space or not applicable, or just not answer the question at all. That was something that I was anticipating and actually tells a lot about a demographic if you're willing to differ from protocol because you strongly believe that there is no interpersonal ranking or you don't feel confident in your own answer. But we'll get to that later. Now for the important part. Last part of the surveys are me asking you why you pick those characters as the best or the worst. When you say combat, what are you looking at? Are you looking at their skills, their place in meta, or even just their genuine playstyle vibe? I give a list of qualities that could define what makes a visual design or what makes a story quest, then ask you to rank them as your top 3. Then amongst the top 3, choose which one is most important. I plugged this CSV into PSPP and waited for my results, and oh boy was that a mistake. Let me tell you, sifting through all of this because I didn't do multiple choice is the hardest part of it. But if I were to put it in a graph, this is going to be an interesting tally. Putting everything in a short answer form because I wanted to give everyone the option to express their opinion is the single dumbest decision I've ever done as a research student because the program was not kind. Nominal values, you are disgusting. But you live and learn to accept your foolish methodologies, so let's get to the juicy part. The answers. After surveying 2,004 respondents, I have my answer to who people think are the best and the worst characters in Genshin Impact. The average demographic of the player base who answered this survey are around AR55 to AR60, who started the game in 2021 to 2022. I'm actually surprised that only 8.6% of the players who answered this played this game in 2023. Over 50% of the players also stated that they play for around an hour or less. So first we have visual design. Visual design includes the character's initial look. Doesn't matter who they are or what they believe in, what matters is what's on the outside. Visual design includes a character's color palette, clothes, cultural inspiration, gender, feature colors, model type, and even name. Basically the whole package of how they look like. And who are the best and worst design characters in Genshin Impact? Furina gets the title as the people's top choice for best visual design, and I can absolutely get that. 389 players have dedicated themselves to the top hat, and even if she wasn't the primary spot for some people, she kept getting special mentions. I obviously didn't count those because I specifically said one character per answer, but you know she's good when she defies the very instructions of the survey itself. Second place is actually for Nahida with over 200 answers, which I found pretty surprising considering how many people used to be very heated about her design. So there's that. And for every good, there is bad. A lot of players actually chose not to respond to this, either by saying they have no opinion at all or they like them all. But there were some answers that I found surprising, with Bennett, Mika, and D-Luke receiving over 100 player votes. But the winner of it all with a resounding difference across the board and over 350 votes is Dory. Sorry, purple fella, the players have spoken. When asked what's important when ranking characters based on visual appeal, an overwhelming number of answers agree that clothes and palette make up for how you judge a character. But cultural inspirations and model type are also amongst the higher contenders. Cultural inspirations rank as the third with 1,512 players counting it amongst their top 3 reasons for judging a character's design. And 635 players also put in their top 3 that model type is a crucial aspect, which I can absolutely get. There is only so much you can do with limited model types, especially when it comes to making the characters not feel similar. But some people also mention as an additional that consistency and cohesion are important. Characters need to feel connected to their personality via their design. Overall, congratulations to Farina! Combat design is basically how they feel when you make them fight. It's not just their playstyle, but also what their combat means to the overall character. For example, some players might prefer pyro characters or geo characters when it comes to determining favorites, or even just overall skills and general abilities. So when it comes to combat design, honorable mentions include Kazuha, who comes in with over 250 votes, which I'm honestly really surprised about. Like, good for you, Animo Boy. Farina, Navia, and A respectively also break the 150 milestone. But the character that was most voted best in combat design is Neuvillette. He beats the entire cast with over 400 players voting in his favor, which I can definitely understand. There is an appeal to just blasting things with a hydro cannon without a thought in the world. And that is definitely an innovative design across dozens of Catalyst users. And unfortunately, in terms of worst combat design and feel, sadly, Dia gets an overwhelming 500 plus votes. I personally have never used Dia, but I am aware of how controversial she was combat-wise when she was first released. What's actually kind of funny is based on the answers, a lot of people are hesitant to vote her, with additional notes like "I'm sorry" or "they did her dirty," which is really telling. You can have an amazing personality and an innovative character, but match that up with a questionable playstyle and people will criticize. But unfortunately, Dia isn't the only Claymore character that people also feel was done dirty. Sinyan was voted as second with over 300 votes, and honestly, as a Sinyan player, I can definitely understand. Dory also clocks in with over 200, which I honestly think is just the overall vibe with Claymores. When people decide how to choose who are the best and the worst combat designs, playstyle is obviously amongst the people's top 3s, especially since this is a combat game. But uniqueness is also highly regarded. Other options also include just the overall skill and uniqueness of a character, like their cancellations, synergy, smoothness, and overall design cohesion. Now for the lore elements. I asked over 2,700 players who do they think has the best story quests and hangouts in Genshin Impact. And here are the results. A good 100 of the respondents actually admitted that they haven't done the quests or didn't pay attention. Honorable mentions include Nahida and A's second story quests being top contenders, as well as Venti, Xianyun, Neuvillette, and Zhongli's Part 1 being some crowd favorites. But the best story quest that I actually haven't personally played yet, so I have high hopes, is Farina's story quest. Look at her getting all the rewards. Now here's a semi-questionable part of this. I mentioned specifically story quests, like character story quests, and not the Archon quests. But miscommunications and misreadings happen, so I'm actually curious if people are counting Farina's ending in Fontaine's Archon quest as the reasons for liking it. And when it comes to best hangout, everyone really liked Beido's, Bennett's, Layla's, and Hazo's, which even getting over 100 votes as the best hangouts. But when it comes to the top spot, a lot of people are actually fighting over it, with several characters getting more than 200 votes. Noelle and Lynette have over 220 plus votes across the board, but Kaya and Kave are the ones neck and neck. But the winner of this category is Kaya, beating Kave by around 10 to 20 votes. But if you want to know the real winner, it's the amount of people that answered they haven't played any of it. Now that's the real majority here. Okay, but what's kind of funny is that there are 46 people that misspelled Bennett and only added 1 T. I don't know why, that's really cute. Now for the worst story quest and hangouts. I'm actually honestly really surprised by this, considering I found the story quest mediocre, but not exactly the worst personally, and that reward overwhelmingly goes to Ayato with over 350 votes, but Kokumi and Nilu's are close. A lot of people agreed that Ayato's story quests were heavily focused on the NPCs, with little spotlight on Ayato himself. which I guess is just how it's meant to be structured as a political story quest. It's unfortunately a byproduct of the fact that Ayato is somewhat of a close-off character even with the Traveler, especially to a stranger, but also because his primary position is meddling in the affairs of other people, which makes sense why it's NPC heavy, but doesn't exactly make it good. Now for the worst hangout, and based on the results, I am definitely seeing a pattern here where everyone hasn't done this part of Genshin, which honestly same, because over 408 players actually think that Barbara's hangout quest is the worst. Now when it comes to why they chose these specific story quests, a lot of people agreed that themes and the lore provided play a heavy part in how they remember the story. But there's also criticism that story quests need to focus on the characters themselves. Insights, narratives, and NPCs are good factors as to why the character quests are loved or unloved. People think that if a story quest focuses too much on an external character and the main featured character feels like an accessory, then you've basically failed. Next up, we have character personality, one of the more controversial hot takes for this matter. When I actually was drafting this part, I was reading discourse about A. Scaramouche and some other more controversial characters with stronger opinions or brasher methods of speech. Looking at you, I'll hide them. Personality is crucial in a game like this because they're the characters we're listening to. If we don't like them, then we don't like them. Personality includes character interests, attitudes, motivations, and even quirks. Now, the answers across the board are spread out because this is an unusual question, but Farina takes the cake with over 450 votes of having the best personality. I love how Farina is just collectively loved by the respondents at this point. She is on fire with these rewards. Probably also because she's among the newer ones on the blog, but hey, love is love. Nahida, Venti, Yoimiya, and Ito are also honorable mentions. Maybe everyone just loves a goofball in their life, which honestly we all need. Now conversely, similar to the design, over 500 people voted Dori as the character with the worst personality for them. Less about the writing of her character, and more so the qualities they decided to give her. They don't like her over-greedy nature. And when it comes to deciding why they like or don't like these characters, people agreed that motivations and quirks are amongst the priority of decision-making, over character attitudes and relationships with the Traveler themselves. One funny part in the other section actually is someone mentioned, "I just dislike child," and I don't know why. Reason be damned, I just don't like child. Also, fun fact, this section of the questionnaire has a typo that just says character, and I don't remember what that's supposed to be anymore, but 1,360 people clicked on it, so it's gotta be significant. Some people also responded voice acting and direction, which I'm honestly surprised that it was such a significant factor that it was mentioned. Voices can heavily implicate a character's personality with or without intention, which is why Barbara's voice direction had to be changed, or why some people are put off by the harshness of Xiao's delivery in the English dub. Now, as an added bonus, I also asked people who do they think has the best potential in future patches. I'm not gonna say who's the worst one considering that these are unreleased characters, but people judge this category based on visual designs, how much they were referenced to in Archon and story quests, and even community content. When it comes to best lore potential in future patches amongst the playable characters, there is no question. Albedo and Kaya are honorable mentions amongst the most anticipated for. But the winner of this category, beating everyone by hundreds of votes, is Venti himself, the questionable, mischievous, and vague god of freedom. I am absolutely glad that he's on the board and definitely agree with the people's choice here. When it comes to the best unplayable characters or who people are most anticipating, Columbina and Dainsleif are our top contenders. I guess everyone just loves some Kanria and Fatui lore, and I'm glad to see that's alive and well. And that's it! These are the preliminary results of the survey, which, oh boy, it was a treat seeing everyone's answers, and thank you to everyone that participated. I decided that for this one, I wasn't going to completely tally the results per character because honestly, you can actually see it if you just read through the form's answers. You can definitely see that there are disparities when it comes to the love that the people think of when it comes to the characters. But that's okay. If you're interested for more content like this, feel free to join the Funny Farms Discord. Won't promise that these surveys are gonna be consistent because of my schedule, but I'm going to keep you guys posted. Anyway, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me. Bye-bye!